So, welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Kate, you know I bloody love you. You are just a freaking ripper. And I don't know, when did I meet you? Was it about 4 years ago, or
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I reckon it was about
Yeah.
2018, and that
Yeah.
I'm going to declare it in front of everyone, Kate. I fell in love with you then, and I still
Oh,
bloody love you.
stop it. You're so sweet. And likewise back. I think it was a mutual falling in love.
Oh, you're just bloody amazing. Well, back then you were working with volunteering on the Sea Shepherd boats, and
Mhm.
still are. Like, and I think what really struck me, not only that you are a freaking gorgeous human being, but your courage. Like, and I've always, I've got my Sea Shepherd top on, see, and you've
Yay.
got your Daughters of the Deep, and we're going to talk about that. Woo! Look at us girls go.
Represent through media.
But as much as I support Sea Shepherd, and I'll buy t-shirts and donate, and I'll do stuff like that, being out on the boat scares the shit out of me. And I've told you that before. That kind of stuff just terrifies me.
Yeah.
And we're too far away from Melbourne to be doing too much volunteering, so I try and do my bit through promotion and everything else. But the courage that I think it takes to go on those ships is astounding. You don't seem to think it's
No,
courageous.
and I don't, and we have touched on this before. And like, it's absolutely an honor to hear you say things like that, and I really appreciate the accolade. But for me, I feel like it just sort of fits with things that I enjoy doing anyway. I think I said to you before, I'm terrible at riding a bike, for example. And if there was a campaign to save an animal that involved cycling for 7 weeks, I probably wouldn't do it because I'm terrible on a bike. But I do love the ocean. I love being on boats. I love being under the water, on top of the water. I don't get seasick. And I love the I guess the camaraderie of it, the excitement of it, the thrill, the desire to do something that I care about. It fits with all of the things I enjoy doing anyway. So I really appreciate you saying it takes a lot of courage, but for me it just feels like, oh, it's just something that I would probably pay to do, to be honest. Like I'd sign up to do it even if I had to pay, because I really just enjoy that experience for everything that it encompasses. It's all of the things that I enjoy. So it doesn't feel courageous to me. It just feels like it's a fun treat.
Oh, well, I'll ride the bike for the animals. All
Okay,
right.
there you go. There we go. We'll have a
And you can stay
cyclothon.
on land. And if anybody's interested, I've been saying for years, well, since I started this podcast, I'm never having anybody on again twice, because it's
Oh,
not fair. In the last few months, Kate's my third person I've had back
yeah.
on again. And
Woohoo.
you go back to, I reckon it's about episode 3 or 4 that you were on.
Uh-huh.
And so if anyone wants to go back and listen to Kate talking about Sea Shepherd, and it's amazing stuff. And sadly, I'm going to get to a couple of points. Sadly, some of the fights that they're doing still haven't been resolved because of dirty fishing habits and everything else. But I want to get to that. But today, first of all, I want to talk about Daughters of the Deep, and that's what you're currently. I'm going to say wrapped up in, but you're kind of wrapped up in all of them. You're in the Coast Guard as well, and Sea Shepherd and Daughters of the Deep, and you just immersed, and you actually are immersed because you're a dive instructor as well.
And I work full time. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
labor of love.
oh, that's right. And you work full time. Kate's a speech pathologist, is it? Speech
Correct.
pathologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so just so you know, you can still save the planet and have a job at the same time. But
Yeah.
you're going to have a pretty good boss that's.
You can definitely try.
So Daughters of the Deep, and I wanted to get you back on to talk about this because it's well, there's a lot of things. It saves a lot of things that hit my values, other than the shitting my pants on a boat. It's the the saving the planet, like saving the animals. It's also Daughters of the Deep also helps women, is really focused on giving women opportunity. So tell us about Daughters of the Deep, because I love it.
Yeah, me too. And I'm, incredibly proud of what we've managed to achieve. We're a fairly new organization. We just launched last year in June. But yeah, just to give a bit of the background. So I was actually approached by a friend who I met many years ago. Actually, we took a boat trip from Panama to Colombia, and I met this guy, George. and we remained friends. And he went on to start working in conservation diving. He's got a few dive schools around the world. And then obviously I was in Sea Shepherd, and we communicated a fair bit around ocean conservation stuff. And then he approached me with an idea, and his idea was Daughters of the Deep. So it was, he had seen the, the gap in the industry there. He has a goddaughter in Nicaragua, and he was aware of some of the struggles that she would be facing in terms of entering the workforce and in terms of some of the barriers for women.
Yeah.
And he had this idea that we could have an organization that would try and address some of those inequalities, try and fund women who have not necessarily got the economic resources or the social resources to get into, well, originally we thought we would do around scuba diving. So that was his thing. Let's fund women to get into scuba diving with a view for them to be able to join a conservation workforce underwater. So coral reef restoration and monitoring of what's happening. That was sort of the core idea. And of course, as soon as he said that, I was like, yeah, brilliant, I'm on board. And himself and another girl, Elle, who he had worked with in his organization, Conservation Diver, another incredibly very qualified diver and passionate conservationist. The three of us sort of formed this idea, and we launched. And it's basically what we're doing is the fundraising part of it. And then we're collaborating with organizations on the ground to channel those funds in to do local projects. Long-term goal, would love to have a Daughters of the Deep dive school or something like that. But in reality, myself and Ella in Australia, George is over in Europe, and we recently, or shortly after launching, recruited another amazing woman, a diver in Spain called Gigi. And so it's hard for us to actually be anywhere where we want to funnel that money. So we do the fundraising, we raise awareness, we sell our merchandise, we ask for money from big corporate organizations, that kind of stuff. And then we send that money out to organizations that through our networks, because between the four of us have all worked in diving and conservation, we've got a fairly large network. So organizations that align with our ethical, environmental values. We have been selecting local women that we can help fund, or adding money into already established programs that are around empowering local women to look after their oceans. So there's like a few different projects that we've started over the last year or so, and we're looking for more projects. We're always interested to find local groups that are also invested in funding women to become part of that workforce. And it's kind of grown organically from originally just around diving to actually funding women to get an education, to stay in school so they can go on and become marine biologists, or kind of one of our most recent projects was around training girls to become whale guides, to be able to understand the cultural significance of the whales in their area, and also the economic and environmental necessity to have them, and how we can by training these girls in the conservation of these animals, we can give them careers in whale guiding and increase tourism and all those kind of things. So it's kind of become quite a wide-ranging project of anything that is supporting women into marine industries at this stage, but who knows where it might evolve and grow into.
That's fantastic. Well, when you said about you handpick girls, you find girls. How do you do that? Like, is that?
Yeah, so our original project, so our sort of flagship project initiative was in Madagascar, and we collaborated with an organization there who are the Madagascan Research and Conservation Institute, MRCI, you can find them. And they were an organization that we knew on a personal level through George's connections with his dive company. And we were talking with one of the girls working there, and she said that they knew of a local girl called Marie Jean, or everyone calls her MJ. And she just gave us some of this backstory, and it was that, and I didn't know this until we started this project, but that in Madagascar, it's actually quite common that young girls, like teenage girls, as a way to bring money to their family and their community, will marry foreigners. This is kind of disgusting, really, but that is a fairly common sort of route to gaining financial support. And this girl was abandoned. MJ was abandoned at a young age and was brought up by her grandfather, who wanted her to stay in education, but her grandfather had become sick and she was unable to continue with her school fees. And MRCI were, obviously really concerned that if she wasn't going to school, that she might then end up down that road of getting married off. And so we were able to finance her remaining in school because the granddad could no longer pay those school fees. So in collaboration with them, they identified the girl that was really in need, and then we did that initial project, and we've also supplemented that with extra English tutorial lessons to kind of in boost that kind of capacity to get into those workforces, and also providing scuba diving certification and marine conservation education, and giving her food and living stipends so that she can actually continue in school, and with a view to potentially going and studying marine biology and that kind of thing. So that was
Wow.
our initial project. So it was just having local people on the ground who were able to point us in the right direction. And since then, we've funded another 2 girls who are also facing challenges that they've identified. So we've got a young girl, Flaria, and a young girl, Olivian, and both those girls now are studying. Flaria wants to become a marine biologist, so we're funding her to do her studies, and Olivia has now got is heading towards currently in a internship with MRCI, where she wants to do studying creating a sea turtle hatchery and studying seagrass, monitoring the seagrass in that area. So she's now looking at a career in that direction as well. So that's how we started out, but then other projects are more wide reaching. So like we funded an already established project in it's called the Sea Women of Melanesia. I don't know if you've heard of them, part of the Coral Sea Foundation. I can send you all the links to these as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're an already established group, and they basically take local women and train them in like coral reef monitoring and that kind of thing. And so Daughters of the Deep was able to collaborate with them to extend that project and fund more women. They're out of we're funding a region. The area is Kimbe in the north of Papua New Guinea. And so we didn't directly pick anyone, but we provided extra funds and resources so that they can pay for the training and all the equipment that they need to do all the science and technology education to continue the coral reef monitoring. So sometimes it's directly chosen, and sometimes we'll just say, if you've already got something that's off the ground, we're happy to put our funds towards that.
Yeah. Wow. And so when you're saying, like, to me, that sounds like a big expense. And before you're talking about fundraising, you're saying selling T-shirts and stuff. Like, to me, it sounds like that's hundreds of thousands of T-shirts. Like how else do you get your money? Like,
well, I mean, it's been amazing. We've managed to raise a lot of funds. Like, obviously, those funds go quite a long way in those areas. So you'd be amazed how much those funds can stretch for like a year of education. Can be just a few $100s and things like that. But also, we've had an incredible response. We've been absolutely blown away with all the support that we've had. And I mean, I think between the 4 of us, we have a huge network of friends and family, and everyone's been buying the merchandise, and which has been fantastic to see. So we did get a lot of input from that. We've had some people just donating directly, and people like Hero Roundtable and our good friend Matt, they stepped in and they funded a whole project that we have now in Niue around the whale guiding. So that was directly funded by our friends at Hero Roundtable. So we're kind of doing a lot of fundraising just through online sales. Elle over in WA did a launch party, and we took over a pub, and we had raffles and all that kind of thing. So it is a lot of fundraising, and some of it through the merchandise, and some of it through trying to secure more of those like business sponsorships. So yeah, it's been incredible how much we've raised just from doing that. So I guess maybe we just touched a nerve. People seem quite inspired by that, or feel like that's something that they want to invest their money in, which is really nice to see. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And you just said, our friend Matt, Matt Langdon from the founder of Hero Roundtable, and I was in Michigan with him, a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, that him and his daughter Vienna were going to do a talk on it, but there wasn't the opportunity. They thought they had to fill a gap, and they were going to talk on that. And I said, you what? And he said, yeah, we funded a project. I said, oh man, I said, I want to do that, and my partner and I, we've got Girls with Hammers, and I did speak to Kate only a week ago and said, we want to fund something. So this is how exciting it is. When you said touching a nerve, as soon as Matt said it, I was like, my hair stood on end, and I'm like, yeah, I want to do that too. That's so important. So if there's anyone listening to this and you've got, I don't know, what would it cost, Kate? I mean, can we?
Well, it totally depends. Like, obviously we'll take anything. Give us $1, we'd be happy with it. But obviously, the more you donate,
we want more.
The more we can do. So we've got internships in Thailand. We're looking at getting other projects off the ground. And if somebody wanted to fund a specific project, or if you know a specific project that you would really like to get off the ground in the area, fantastic, let us know. Or if you want to know, like, if I give you this much money, how much can that directly support, or what can you do with it? And we can absolutely, you know, crunch some numbers and work that one out. But yeah, any level of support, whether it's ongoing donations or whether it's just like a lump sum, it's like, I really want to do this in this area, and we'll go out there and find a project that's worth funding. I think that you're right. I think just going back to touching a nerve, I think one of the things that makes Daughters quite unique is, well, as you know from Girls with Hammers and the work that you do in that space, you know, gender inequality is still rife. As much as we've moved on, there's still big gaps there.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of work around championing women, which is, you know, all part of the same. It's all part of the same drive. It's very important work. And we were looking at sort of those diving communities are quite playful around, look at us being women and we're doing what we're doing. And I think where Daughters fits a kind of niche maybe is more kind of championing. That's why our logo is for want of a better word, like badass. Like, we're not just having fun doing this, we are part of this elite workforce, and we can work just as hard as, you know, with Girls and Hammers. And, you know, and we can do things that are quite dangerous just as much as our male counterparts. And Daughters is actually going to fund some of those things. So it is about championing it, but it's also about getting out there and going, okay, there's a deficit here in this workforce. We're going to support you however we can through funding to be able to match you know, the gaps in that workforce. So I think you know, it's kind of tangible. It's kind of like about female representation and all that kind of, or female identifying. I'll just have to add that note as well. But it's also about like actual things that you can see, the hands-on effect, like what Matt has funded in New Way. We've actually now got 6 girls who are trained to be whale guides. That's an actual tangible result of that funding. So I think it's I think that's why it's kind of been quite successful, because I don't know of too many other programs out there doing that end of the spectrum. You know, it's all worthy work, but to actually be out there identifying those deficits and funding them, I think is something that has really spoken to a lot of people, which is really nice.
Oh, I think it's fantastic, and it's not a lot of money. Like a couple of grand, you know, can buy, you know, support a whole program or a whole project and that sort of stuff. And I reckon if you're thinking about that and thinking, God, I'd love to be able to help, I can't help any other way. Like me, I'm not getting on a boat and I'm not getting under the water, you know. But how can you help? And if you've got the money, just, you know, like what there's no better feeling, you know, than, hey, I just funded that whole program, and now, like Matt, you know, now these 6 girls are now going to be whale guides. I mean, that's stuff.
And exactly that. And, you know, so when I was talking to Matt about that, I think we talked about a few different projects that we could have him and Vienna fund. And we picked Niue because it's close to Australia, because he and Vienna want to go to Niue and meet the girls. And it's like an actual project that you can do. And I'm like, I want to come too, you know. And George, our founder, or the guy who sort of started this whole initiative, he's actually in Madagascar right now, and he's meeting with MJ and Flavia and Olivia, and like, what a gorgeous thing to be able to do, to be like, you know, I have managed to support this, and now I can see it in action, and I can see face to face like how this is going to affect you and change your life, and you know, be a part of that process. So I think that's really nice, and I hope I get to meet some of these girls one day as well. It would be so good. Yeah, it's really really touches that human spirit of collaboration and community work, and I think that's important to a lot of people.
I bloody love it. And I do love what you're saying about the logo. It is badass. You know,
it is pretty badass.
Sea Shepherd's badass. It's badass. And it's kind of saying, in the way I see it, you know, some people say Sea Shepherd looks like pirates or whatever you want to say, you know, but I think what it stands for is, no, we are badass, and we're not going to sit back and let you assholes screw up the world, you know, and you're not going to let people treat women like they're pieces of shit. We're going to step in and stand up, and you need to bloody move out of the way, because we're coming through, and we're going to do it whether you like it or not. And I love that kind of energy that goes with it. You know, it's just it's powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And it's powerful. And, you know, it's been a really interesting process and heartbreaking at the same time, because we did a lot of interviews when we first started. I was interviewing lots of women in areas of the marine industry that people would kind of raise an eyebrow at, like maybe not just in diving, but in commercial diving, which is pretty hardcore. I don't think I would ever do that, you know, like welding and things under rigs and like, you know, installing piers and all that kind of stuff. You know, and you do come across kind of the gender bias there of like women entering into that workforce, and there are so many women who are doing really hardcore things. It's not just about like, oh, we're here and we're doing it. We're actually just as capable as the male counterparts. And that girl that I interviewed, who was a commercial diver, she told me some really heartbreaking stories around her experiences as a woman in that industry. You know, things like being asked in her interview whether or not she was planning on having a family because the boss didn't want to pay for her maternity leave. And dare I even say it, like asking her whether she'd be able to dive when she was on a period, you know, like really archaic, just bullshit. And then eventually she did, you know, she pushed through all that shit and she did manage to get a job. And her boss, who was originally hesitant, now says she's one of the best workers, obviously, and that he wants to employ more women and he wishes he'd done it sooner, you know? So it's like, we are just absolutely as part of that workforce, and we should be seen as absolutely as competent, absolutely as daring. We have female captains on our ships at Sea Shepherd who are every bit as ballsy as the male captains, every bit as competent, if not more so. So I think it's about balancing that, but also showing that that's across all areas of the most challenging jobs out there. Women can absolutely do them to the same level. So I think it's really important that we maintain that kind of gritty image. That's not just we're girls and we're doing it, yay.
Yeah, I love it. You know, you thinking of Sea Shepherd and thinking about saving the oceans and your Daughters of Deep, getting more women out there, because you know there's a lot of passion in the women, you know, wanting to save it. I've heard this, and it sort of really disappoints me no end. People say, "Who gives a shit about the ocean? Like just bloody fish." And you know, I've heard those comments, and then other people are really smart asses, and oh yeah, like pretty good, go fishing and chuck a fish on the bar, like just sort of real. Well, I'm just going to say it, dickhead comments, you know, that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of attitude, and not from everyone, because there's some really great people who do understand that if the oceans die, we freaking die. And if you don't understand that, hear me say it, guys, if the ocean dies, we die. Like we are so dependent on the ocean. What, I guess, how do you respond to that? Like, if people don't understand, they say they know that the Japanese have got the whaling boats, and they go, yeah, but they're doing that for research, and they got to, you know, like that's fair enough. Like, what do you say to that kind of stuff? Because we've got to save the oceans.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I feel like this is a question that comes up often with other activists, you know, like how do we tackle this issue? Because it's so giant and it permeates so many different systems, and it's so easy to have apathy and just go, oh, it's like, oh, away from me, I can't see it, I don't care. I think I generally come from an angle of trying not to be too aggressive with, you know, I've got a head full of facts that are like really hardcore facts, but I wouldn't necessarily start at that point. I try to find something that is relevant to the person. So a good example of this, the other day, I lived with a girl who I also met from Sea Shepherd, actually. She's one of my crew members, amazing woman. And together we're doing a charity walk for Climate for Change, because obviously we care about the climate. And we got in a taxi the other day, and there's been a lot of floods here in Melbourne, as you know.
Yeah.
Just around here. And the taxi driver started talking about the floods, and then he started talking about you know, everyone says it's global warming, but it was always flooded in Melbourne, la 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 la. And I'm looking at my housemate, we're like, don't say anything, like trying to keep quiet. And so we were just gently and kindly exploring that with him, and just talking about, oh yeah, okay, but have you noticed that that's increased any more in recent years? Or, oh yeah, you know. And anyway, long story short, we went around the houses, and he eventually just said, oh, I suppose I just don't really care that much. Like I just don't, you know, I don't really care. And we were just, okay. And then we said, well, you know, he said, oh, that's right. He said, I'll be dead before any of that happens. And we said, oh yeah, that's probably true. Do you have any kids? And he's like, oh yeah. I said, well, what do you think your kids' world will look like then? And he's sort of like, oh yeah, you know, I suppose I just hadn't really thought about it. So like just trying to find something that like somebody really cares about. So like with that whole thing about caring about the oceans, well, yeah, maybe you don't care about the fish in the ocean, but do you like to breathe? Because you're not going to be able to breathe in a few years if you don't save the ocean, you know, like, or do you like doing ocean sports? Or, you know, like what is it that connects you? Like try and find something that you can connect them to that. You know, do you care about climate change? Like if you care about climate change, then you have to think about saving the oceans. If you care about, you know, atrocities happening to humans, then you have to care about the oceans, because there's so much human trafficking and slavery that's happening in these industrial fishing organizations. Do you have a dog? Do you love your dog? Would you eat your dog? Why are you eating a tuna? You know, like try and find something that you can get on a level with that person in a way that's not aggressive and that's not going to get them on the back foot, and just try and plant a seed of, oh shit, yeah, I probably didn't think about that. Oh yeah, I probably should think about my kids. Or, well, yeah, I suppose I do care about my dog. Why wouldn't I care about a whale? You know, like I don't know. It's difficult. It's fucking hard. And there's so many different ways to there's so many different ways to peel that potato, skin a potato or whatever. And, shouting about it is one, writing letters to the government is another, going and parading and campaigning in the streets is another, going out on Sea Shepherd is another, having gentle conversations and being open-minded to the opposing view, I think, is another that's also just as valid in that space.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll just have to try and find something.
Well, I kind of see it like a triangle. Like there's, agitate, advocate, and educate. And which one of those do you sit on? And I know that for me, years ago, I was sitting on the agitate. Like I was so bloody angry with people. And it didn't work for me. It didn't, it didn't work. And I remember being in Melbourne one day, handing out flyers, some vegan, animal rights flyers, and which I believe in. I was doing this, and then this guy that I was doing it with, as these people walked past, he tried to hand the flyer to them, and they said that they were quite polite, and they said no thanks, and that's their choice. And he went on to abuse them, call them effing idiots, and right in that moment, I just put my flyers down and I just went home. I thought, I'm not even going to do this, because as much as I'm angry, I'm not abusing people. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm frustrated with the state.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? But you're right. Like when I first joined Sea Shepherd all those years ago, and I got really overexposed to, I was watching so many documentaries about what's happening, because I just didn't know, like everyone else just didn't know. And then I'm watching Racing Extinction, and I'm watching Blue, and I'm watching, all these really heavy documentaries, and I was fucking angry about it. Like, how is this happening and people don't know about it? And I think you do go through that process as an activist, whatever your activism. I've seen friends get really into the Black Lives Matter movement, or friends who are really invested in like human rights and things like that, and you can see like it's just so frustrating, because why is it left to a small proportion of the world to give a fuck about these things? Excuse me. Because and why is it that the rest of the majority of the planet just get to live in complete ignorant bliss, which it is? Sometimes I think, like, God, it would just be easier to, I don't know, watch the Kardashians and book a holiday. Like, but that's not, it doesn't fit right with my morals and my ethics. And so we do. But I think you sort of have to go through that process of being really angry and realizing that that anger doesn't always work. And that's not to bash organizations that use that as their tool. There are a lot of direct action organizations out there who are pretty, like Anonymous for the Animals and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think maybe that does impact in some ways. But for me, I sort of had to get through the anger and get to a point of, what's the phrase? You get more bees with honey than vinegar. Be a nice person, be a kind person, be open to a conversation, and then trick them into listening to you and taking your point of view. That's the angle I'm going down. Just reel them in with niceness, and then give them some facts, make them think about it.
Well, I started going down that whole path of just reeling them in with role modeling. It's kind of like, I'd have a vegan meal and people would say, "What are you eating that shit for?" And I'd say, "Well, you know what? I just don't think I need to murder someone, to have a meal." And then, well, I didn't kill it. And I'm like, no, but someone did. Someone did it. And I
totally.
said,
I love that one. Another favorite, I love that, because it makes people think. And the other one I like in that argument as well is like, I just don't think this animal needs to die for me to have a nice taste for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
lots of other things taste nice, and I don't think nobody needs to lose their life just so that I can have a nice taste in my mouth. But that's up to you. You have a think about that.
Well, there's
judgment / huge judgment.
But the point is, I tell you what the point is, though, is that people do care. So whether you're educating, advocating, or agitating, whatever you're doing, it's so bloody nicer just to see people care about something beyond themselves. I think that's important. I was going to ask you, which is really, I love it. What do you think? I don't love this, but just so that we can sort of hit some ground, what is not that we haven't been, what is the greatest marine threat, do you reckon? Like, because we're saying, the oceans are going to die soon if we don't make some change.
Okay, if you wanted to go in more conceptually, I would say the biggest threat to the oceans is apathy, people not giving a shit.
Yeah.
But if you want to say more tangibly or realistically, I think plastics is a huge issue that is going to consume us all very soon.
Yeah.
The amount of plastics in the ocean is crazy, and it's almost like a runaway train. And I don't think we've really seen the full extent of that. Even if we were to stop plastic production from the top down industry and bottom up, consumption, all those, I suppose, are the same thing. When I said that out loud, that was silly. But like even if government stopped it and we stopped demanding it, then I think that we will still see the huge the aftermath of the plastic generation, because it's only been around since like the 70s, hasn't it? It was huge amounts of plastic now. I think that is huge. And then just like, illegal fishing, unreported fishing, all of the stuff that goes with that, that is a huge proportion of what's the threats to the ocean, whether it's, I mean, I know Sea Shepherd just recently talked about a campaign, you might have caught it, where they were fishing for prawns, and like 98% of the catch was bycatch, and thousands and thousands and thousands of fish and dolphins and turtles and God knows what else were just discarded for like 6 prawns or whatever. It's that kind of stuff that is decimating our oceans in staggering levels. The amount of sharks that we're killing, like less than 900,000 a year or something, bycatch, because they might have a ticket to catch one thing and they're catching a bazillion others that they're not using, and then they're just discarding and die. All of that illegal fishing industry is definitely a huge threat, and I think possibly more so than anything else at the moment.
There'll be so many people who say, but when they bycatch, they save their lives, they throw them back in. What's the truth about that?
Absolutely not. No. If you think about the way that they catch those fish, often it's like that purse seining technique, which I don't know if you know, but it's like they kind of like drop a massive net in a big circle, and then it's like a purse. They kind of tighten the purse strings, and they catch it all up, and they'll have tons and tons and tons and tons of animals in there, and then they haul it out. And so if you think about, I mean, even just the bodies of fish and sea creatures, they're designed to be suspended in water. They're not designed to be taken out. Even just removing some of those deep water animals out into the surface air pressure that we have, it will crush all of their internal body parts anyway. But imagine that times the thousands of millions of other animals that are surrounding you, squished into this net, and then you're dumped onto a deck in air when you breathe water, obviously. So then they're suffocating, not only from the pressure, but from not being able to breathe. And they're left there while they pick through and find their 2.5 prawns or whatever the crap it is, and then they're discarded back. So most often those animals are crushed, they've suffocated in the air, they are so damaged by that whole process that none of them survive. I think the survival rates of bycatch, I wouldn't even dare to guess. I would say probably less than 1%. It's just not a realistic argument when you look at the way that those industries work, and there's plenty of evidence out there to show and document what actually happens. It's not just a man with a fish, even though John What's-a-Face tuna Playpool will have you believe that, because they put like a little line and a hook on their tins to try and convince you that that's what's happening, but it's absolutely not. Or when they're dragging huge nets across the ocean floor and destroying everything that lives down there, and all the reefs and all the life systems that are down there get destroyed by those huge terrible fishing practices. So bycatch is a huge issue, and it's certainly not one that makes it sustainable or any of those crappy words that people use.
No. And it's also, even if you didn't care about one type of fish, let's say, and we're not mixing dolphins in with fish and sharks in with fish and all that sort of stuff, turtles. Even if you didn't, it's the chain, the ecosystem, the chain of what's it called? The chain of why have I lost that word? Like what each animal eats.
Like the food chain, and the ecosystem, for sure, exactly. No, you're right, and that's why people think like, oh, whatever, sharks, who cares? But sharks are apex predators. They're top of that food chain, and there's so much evidence that we've seen many times. You remove one part of that whole process, and then the part below will overpopulate, or and then that will destroy the lower. There's so many examples of that with Yellowstone National Park and in various places with the wolves and the deers, and you take one thing out of that system, that ecosystem, and the whole thing is thrown into imbalance. Nature knows what it's doing, and it's designed a certain way for a reason. And when we start meddling with it and removing certain species, the whole thing just collapses. Never mind, all that we know around the phytoplankton that are getting destroyed and the processing of carbon in the air and the oceans dying from global warming and all that kind of crap. Even just those ecosystems in amongst the animals that live in the oceans, that we disrupt those too much, we're going to see complete collapse. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like you said, if you don't care about one thing, hopefully there'll be something else that you care about in all of that
Well,
atrocities.
and we're all so interconnected, all of us, like
Mm.
us humans are so dependent. I remember when you're talking about I'm not sure it was Yellowstone National Park, but I think it was with the wolves, and
Mhm.
they moved all the wolves out because it's kind of like, someone decided they didn't like wolves. But
Mhm.
then and don't get me wrong, because I can't remember the story exactly, but everything dried up, and
Mhm.
I think it was the deer or the
Yep.
antelope became too popular, and they
Mhm.
were destroying everything. And then there's somebody in their wisdom, which is great wisdom, said, let's put the wolves back in.
Mhm.
And the rivers started flowing again.
Mhm.
All of the earth
It
started
flourished.
combusting properly
Yep.
again. Everything started
Yep.
flourishing again.
Because
And
the deers had overpopulated, and the deers were chewing through all of those tiny little shoots of young trees, young plants that often are around those rivers or whatever. And then because of that, all the little bugs and all the little creatures that would normally live in those plants disappeared. So then all of the small animals that live off them, like the water base, like water rats and all the kind of like little, just the whole ecosystem just dried up because there were too many deers who were just destroying everything. And then you put the wolves back in, the deers fall down, the plants can grow back, the frogs and all the things that eat those little bugs come back, and nature flourishes again because she knows
yeah,
what she's doing, because she's smart.
no, yeah, nature knows what she's doing, not
She
us
does.
with guns,
No, we're stupid.
culling. And I think that the minute when we actually wake up to that, well, there's too many deer, so now we'll just shoot the deer.
Ah,
It's kind of like if we just let nature take care of it. And I've had so many arguments with
rewilding.
people say if we don't eat the cows, they'll overpopulate us.
No.
I know. I can't handle it. Now, anyway, before I get into a cranky state, what about this? The vaquita. You've done a lot of work in Sea Shepherd in the Gulf of Mexico and
Yeah.
trying to save a little porpoise called the
Yeah.
vaquita. And you were
Poor
in
little
there.
vaquita.
I was following you. We're friends. I mean, you were in there for like 2 years or more. Like trying to
I'm
get.
about to go on my 6th or 7th campaign
Wow.
for that one. Yeah, I've been doing that since 2017. Yeah,
Oh
that's when
shit,
it was.
that's no 5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
huge. Yeah. So so that well, that one breaks my heart. Yeah, it's the vaquita, as you know, lives just in that area in the northern part of the Gulf of California in Mexico. It's only indigenous in that area. And it's going extinct, not because people are trying to kill the vaquita, but because people want to catch a fish that lives in that area called the totoaba. And the reason they want to catch that fish is not to eat it, but to cut out its swim bladder, which is the thing that kind of gives it ballast, and dry it out and then send it over to Asia to be sold on the black market. Why? I don't know. I think historically it had some perceived medicinal properties, as often is the case with things that end up on the Chinese black market.
yeah.
But it's sort of almost become a status symbol now, and people will give it as a wedding gift. They don't eat it, they might frame it and put it on the wall, that kind of thing.
Oh,
And the demand has gone up so high that it's worth, more than like rhino horn and cocaine and gold. And, it's just crazy how much it's worth. So everyone's clamoring to get this fish, including obviously cartel have got quite heavily involved in that. And the way that they catch it is using a net that has quite a large space in it to catch the totoaba on its gills, called a gill net. And it's an illegal type of net. And unfortunately, the vaquita is roughly the same size as that totoaba. Oh my gosh, I couldn't say it. And is sort of by proxy dying in those nets that are aimed to get the totoaba. So when I first went out there in 2017, they estimated there was between 30 and 50 left, and now they think probably less than 10
wow.
in the world, because they only live there. So super sad, super important work that's happening. Yeah, and it's been fascinating to see how that's grown and changed over the years from just patrolling and the poachers being afraid of us, to them becoming much more confident, to them attacking us, to us having armed guard on board our vessel, to now engaging with the Navy to when we're now patrolling, and we're really effectively patrolling the area where a lot of those vaquita are found. And then if we do find anyone illegally fishing, we're reporting to the Navy, and they're being super efficient in approaching those vessels and tackling that situation. But I believe earlier this year was the first year we've actually had no poachers within that area because of our heavy presence there, which is
Wow.
a huge win. So yeah,
Yeah.
really hopeful that that will go in a positive direction. I do know, like biologically, because I get asked this one as well a few times, like is it likely that the species can recover when there's that few many left,
Mm.
in terms of inbreeding and stuff like that. But apparently biologically it is actually capable of reproducing, even if there was just one male and one female left, because of the fact that it's always lived in such a small area that
Yeah.
it's kind of evolved to be able to have some inbreeding without too many issues. But the problem would be, I think they only have one calf or pup, whatever it's called, like a year or whatever. So to regrow that population is going to take a huge amount of enforcing, patrolling in that area and keeping that place safe so that the vaquita can repopulate and hopefully we'll save it from going extinct. Yeah.
Oh, and what are we? What are we losing? 2,000 species or something a day or something like that.
Crazy. Yeah. Between plants and animals. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
wild.
yeah,
Yeah.
not porpoises and stuff, but still,
Yeah.
it's just the fact that they're just using that swim bladder as a
Mm.
non-necessity.
Mm.
It's
Oh, it's heartbreaking. It's just
heartbreaking.
greed, and it's so pointless. And it's just I think people do, well, it comes back to the whole thing of like getting people to care. But I watched Racing Extinction again recently, which was one of the first documentaries that
Yeah,
ever really inspired me. I don't know if you've seen it, but
yeah,
there's a guy there who's cataloging all these animals that are going extinct. And they showed footage of this bird, and it's a male bird, and he's calling for his partner, and then the voiceover says he's the last one. There is no more of his species. He's never going to find a partner. They're never going to have another child. And it's just like, oh, it's so heartbreaking to think that this is happening so regularly. These frogs going extinct all the time, all these animals going extinct. But obviously the vaquita is one that it looks like a dolphin and people care about it, so it's a really good kind of
yeah,
what's the word, poster child for the
yeah,
campaign. But essentially that covers all animals that are going extinct. Like, we should care about these animals. Um and yeah, the idea of losing the animal now is just heartbreaking. Yeah.
yeah. I agree. How
Mm.
can people get involved? Like, other than, like, they can get involved with buying your t-shirts and by donating to a program or just donating anyway.
To
But
daughters or
well,
to Sea Shepherd or everything?
well, we've already covered to Daughters of the Deep. So in a pro, you can send some money in, and either a big
Mm-hmm.
amount or a small amount, or you can buy a t-shirt, or
Mm-hmm.
if you see any fundraising. Same with Sea Shepherd, buy merchandise. Get involved,
Mm-hmm.
give money. How can people, if people are listening to this and go, fuck, I didn't know any of that, I didn't realize that, what's the best course of action for the average
Yeah, absolutely.
person?
And I think like getting the message out there. So like sharing social media posts is a huge one. If that's all you do, that's still hugely beneficial, just sharing that message, because a lot of people just like, whoa, I had no idea. So you go, well, look at this video. This is a real video. This isn't made up. This is what's happening in the oceans. So I think like following along conservation web pages and sharing the information there is really fantastic. Getting educated yourself. A lot of these documentaries, they're not like really gruesome or anything. They're heartbreaking, some of them, but
Yeah,
they're also quite inspiring. So there's a whole bunch of environmental documentaries that you can watch, and you can learn what's happening from there. And then I suppose just changing your own practices. So going back to plastics, refusing single-use plastics, thinking about a plant-based diet, shopping locally to reduce your carbon imprint, all those kind of things in your own personal choices, who you're voting for in government, looking at local environmental policies. You can go and help out in your local communities. If there's environmental projects, you can get involved. There's a whole suite of things you can do, from the extreme to the kind of mundane. And we can make those choices every single day, in the way that we spend our money, in the way that the places that we support, not going to SeaWorld, those kind of things. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can be trying to save these animals or save the ocean without actually leaving your house. Yeah, for sure.
and every single thing you said there is small and achievable. Like, every
Mm-hmm.
little thing, you could do all of those things, or even if you did one of those things, if every single household did one of those things, we'd be in a much better
Absolutely. Yeah.
situation. And they're not hard things to do. So, but you've just reminded me too, when you said sharing social media posts, I was just thinking, shit, I haven't I haven't seen any Sea Shepherd ones for ages, and I haven't shared any. So there's going to be a challenge for me to start, buddy.
There you go. That's your homework. Start
Lift,
sharing.
there's my homework. Lift your game, Karen. Don't just wear the t-shirts. Bloody start sharing and doing
You
stuff.
do absolutely loads. You have so many projects and you care so deeply. You are definitely not someone who should be berated for not doing enough. You already do absolutely loads.
Oh well, I can do more. We can all do more, and it's
I wish more people had the Karen mentality.
Ah,
That's my number one thing.
But I'm not perfect.
No one's perfect. But if we had more people who had your attitude, we would be in a lot better place. That's for sure.
Well, hopefully through this podcast, myself and my amazing guests like you know, can actually start to inspire people to believe that they have more impact than they think they do, you know, and more possibility to make change than they think they do. So
absolutely,
that's my job. That's my footprint on this planet, is to
fantastic.
Yeah.
What a worthy cause.
I can live with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where can people find you?
Well,
you
so we've got
and Daughters of the Deep, and
Daughters of the Deep online with www.daughtersofthedeep.org. We're on Instagram as Daughters of the Deep Official and Facebook as Daughters of the Deep. Sea Shepherd, you can jump on the Sea Shepherd Global pages or Sea Shepherd US pages. You can follow all of their social media online. I myself am Lady Parker at 1984 on Instagram, but you don't need to follow me. Follow the pages, follow Daughters of the Deep and follow Sea Shepherd, and follow the great work that's happening and getting off the bench, and Girls with Hammers and other organizations out there that are doing great things. So
absolutely love it. And are you on LinkedIn?
I am not. Oh, do you know, I think I am on LinkedIn. I don't think I've checked LinkedIn in about 10 million years, but if I am, it'll be for speech therapy stuff. So if you want a speech therapist, find me as
Well, that's just as needed. If people want to donate, like if people want to donate for a program and say, hey, listen, I got $5,000. I just want to work out a program with you. What's the best way to do that?
Shoot me an email, kate@daughtersofthedeep.org. Or if not, you want to go to the general one, is info@daughtersofthedeep.org. Anyone who responds to that email will be like, yes, please. Fantastic. We'll give you a t-shirt.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, I'm going to put all those links in the show notes anyway, because I want people to support you, because I just love what you're doing, and Girls with Hammers is going to support you and we'll talk. You and I will talk.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you for allowing me to be able to talk about all these things and for supporting the work that I do. It's it's just as important, championing each other and giving each other that space and that voice. So huge, massive thanks from Daughters of the Deep, not only for this and for the exposure, but for the plans for the future. I'm excited to see what we're going to end up doing. You have to pick a place. You're like, I want to go and work in there, and we'll find
I know, I can't wait to do that. But Kate, thank you so much. And you and I were meant to catch up for
absolutely
this weekend. Actually, we would have been together tonight, but it's been cancelled. But I can't wait to see you again. And I was just telling Kate, we want to get Kate to speak at the next Girls with Hammers conference in 2023. So if you are local and you're coming to that conference, you will see Kate in person, and you can hear her story. It'll be different to what she said here, but Kate,
I'll be talking about the new collab with Girls of Hammers, Girls with Hammers, and what project we've got off the ground. It'll be great.
Well, good, fantastic. But Kate, I absolutely love you. Always have, always will. You just, I just love your heart and soul and your spirit, and you're just one amazing human being. And I'm really honoured to be your friend. Really am honoured. So.
That's very sweet, and right back at you. I think it's really awesome when we see other people doing what we inspire to do ourselves, and we just inspire each other. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I do too. Oh, my absolute pleasure. All right, well, I will catch up with you very soon, and we'll get on the way. All right. Thanks, Kate. See ya.
No worries. Bye.
Ta-da.